Hello, everybody. Great. I need to get used to this delay. I normally don't deal in delay. I am very instantaneous. Hello again, everybody. We are going to do Edge Animate today, and I already started a little project here in Edge Animate. I'm going to walk you through a very typical workflow. But before I do, I make sure that I'm recording this. So I started recording. That should be fine. Oh, you see the picture-in-picture effect. And I'm not even using After Effects to do that. Okay, so this workflow that I'm going to describe started in Illustrator. I got a file from an Illustrator that I don't know. So I went into Illustrator and I took a look on the layers within this illustration, and I found that there are different bits and pieces that I might need to use, and I didn't worry too much about the construction of the file itself. I just wanted to make sure that everything that I will need for my banner to be animated is in there, and after I found that everything is fine with the Illustrator file, I go to File and I choose Export. And I didn't know whether you knew this or not already, but if you take a look, I can actually export into a Photoshop file straight from Illustrator. If you do that, then of course this will generate all the corresponding layers in Photoshop, which is awesome, because if I go to Photoshop, this is pretty much what I get from my artboard. I had to do a little tweaking on the actual design. And you can see that my text came through as editable text. And I got some smart objects here that I created from the background. And that is pretty much it. All I want now is all these assets to be generated for me into a folder that I have. Let me just take a look. I actually have my Christmas folder. And I have an assets folder here, and I kind of want to put everything in there. Why not? So the first thing that I will do is in Photoshop, I can use the generate feature. This is generate, and I can use image assets. I can also, with the new version, the CC 2015, using the right click on the layers panel, I can export as, or I can do a quick export as a PNG file, right? If I'm using the Generate Image Assets feature, and that's what I'm going to do, I'm going to go into File, Generate, and I'm going to generate the image assets for this file. This will generate the image assets next to that PSD file. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to, let's say, the background, and I will change the name of the background layer. So the background will now be called, I just double-clicked on the name, it will now be called background.png, and I press Enter. Now that I've done that, I can go in here and I can take a look, and there is the Christmas banner assets, and the background.png file is there already. That's great. That's what I'm going to use for my background. I can go and do the same for, this is the click circle. I'm going to rename that. I'm just going to call it, let's leave the spaces out and just use underscore for that. .png, that will also be a PNG file. There is the text that I want to have displayed. I'm going to use, because I don't know if this is a web font or not, I will leave that rasterized, and I'm going to create a PNG asset for that. My current PSD file is 150 dpi, so it's quite large. I'm not worried about losing quality. So I'm going to do .png, that's brilliant. It's the 10-day training vouchers. Let's just call this 10 days, right? And I do .png on there as well. So far so good. And finally there is these two text layers. I'm just going to call this AC text.png, and this will be another, let's call this Xmas.png. Let's call it Xmas text to be a bit more specific. And finally, there is this image right there in the side. I'm going to rename that as well. I'm going to call this, let's call it boxes.png for now. So now if I go back into the Xmas banner assets, you will see that I see banners or boxes, I see Christmas comes early text, AC text is of course white, so that's why I don't see. If you take a closer look, you will find that it is all there. And again, white text, and white text. That's cool. All these are transparency images. That's great. And of course my background is there as well. So I am going to, just to be on the safe side, duplicate that folder. And I'm going to name this images. All right. And now I'm going to use a really neat little trick in Edge Animate. You see that Edge Animate by default creates HTML files. And you probably know that much about HTML. HTML does not embed images, right? It references images from different folders. So the default folder name to keep images in for any HTML document is images. So I'm going to go ahead and save this. So I'm going to go Save As, and I'm going to save this into my Christmas folder. And there is an images folder right there. And I'm going to call this, let's call it Banner 1. And I save that. And with a little luck, my image assets would be already filled. If not, I can go back to my folder and use all these guys from there. Right? All the image assets that I had in Photoshop or created or generated from Photoshop are now loaded. Of course, I could keep this live and link to the image assets in the generated folder. And now all I'm going to do is I'm going to assemble. Let's start with the background because that's always a good idea. We can actually grab all these and drag them onto the scene like that. Right? All these came on their own individual elements. In the Elements panel, I can see that Edge Animate created a new HTML div for each of the elements that I dragged onto the stage. So far, so good. I will change the viewport so it fits. You can see that there is this little navigation button here that says 61%. I can change that. I zoomed out, so I can now change the size of all the different assets at once. Right. So my sizes are correct. All I need is to arrange these little guys. So I say, Christmas comes early. That looks about right. And then that's a price. These are my images right there. All I need is a little arrangement, because obviously the background is now on top of these two other text layers. So just like in Photoshop and Photoshop layers, I can drag the order of these things in Edge Animate. So the Elements panel is pretty much like your Layers panel would be in Photoshop. Right, so there it is, Academy class. I'm going to drag that over there. I get constant smart guides, so that helps me position these layers correctly. And there is the 10 days. I'm going to drag that to be aligned like this. So all I've done so far is from an Illustrator file that I did not create myself, I tore it apart, exported into a PSD file, and generated image assets to be used in a web banner. And then I assembled all that in Edge Animate using my library panel, where I imported all the images from a specified library. I use that little plus button to do that. And then using my Elements panel, I arrange the layer order so that all the layers are in the correct order. So far so good. Now let's go to the actual animation part of Edge Animate, because understandably I want to make all this animate. So you probably already noticed that one of the biggest part of the user interface in Edge Animate is the timeline, right? This guy over here. The timeline also does have a layer, sort of a layer panel that tells me what objects I have on stage, right? Like this. And every single time I select an object, in the Properties tab on the left-hand side, it will show me what properties that object can have. What you also might notice is that next to each one of these properties, you're going to see that little diamond there. Anywhere where you see that diamond, that means that you can animate that property. So you can add a keyframe on your timelines for that property. And let's try something really simple. I'm going to try to animate Christmas comes early. I'm going to try to animate it so that it comes in from the right-hand side, given that I always mix my left and right hands up. Saying right-hand side the first time, it's already a win for me. Okay, so what I will do is I will tell Edge Animate that I want to animate the position, right? And that's that guy over there. This is the position of the object. And I want to move it along the x-axis. I want to move it horizontally. So I'm going to keyframe the left axis. As soon as I do that, that little layer there got a new keyframe, right? And I can move that keyframe on the timeline if I want to, or I can move my playhead on the timeline if I want to. So if I know that I want that object to end up there, I'm going to move that keyframe that I just created, and then I'm going to move the object off screen, and the new keyframe gets created automatically because I'm already animating that property. So far, that's what I have. If I press the spacebar or I click this little play button right there, play, brackets, space, it will play the animation back. Not too complicated, but you can do this much, much easier as well. So let's see how I can animate, say, Academy class. I want to animate Academy class so it comes in from the bottom. So what I will do is I will use this little guy over here. This is the AutoKeyframe mode. And if I click the AutoKeyframe mode, then if I change anything for the layer, it will automatically create those keyframes for me, right? I can do this even easier because not only can I enable auto-keyframing, I can also enable this toggle pin. If I click on that, I will be able to animate from to or to from, right? So it's either a yellow chevron or what I need in this case is a blue chevron, like that, like this. So it now animates from that position to that position. This is pretty much how I'm going to animate most of the things in this project. So I want this object to start there and go there. So it goes whoop, like this. Right? Not that difficult. If I want to change the timing of the animation, then I can use these little bars. So of course I want to animate this whole thing so that the Christmas text animates before the Academy class text. So I'm going to grab that bar and I'm going to drag it so that the first keyframe aligns with the last keyframe of the previous animation. And let's play this back. Duck, duck. Fairly simple. Nothing too complicated. Also nothing too fancy. So let's do something. If you want to change the duration, because I found that Academy class animates a bit too slow, then of course you can grab any of the keyframes and you can drag it closer to the other, and this changes the duration, so it makes the animation go a bit faster. And so it goes, Christmas coming early at Academy class. That's nice. Now, obviously this kind of animation is rather simple, straightforward, mainly because it is a linear animation. A linear animation means that the speed does not change for this object. It goes through this distance with the same speed. To make this a bit more interesting, I'm going to add easing to this animation. So to do this, I'm going to use that little button here, which is easing, and by default is set to linear to all animation. So I can select the animation that I want to change the easing for, I can click the easing button, and I can change the easing type. As you can see, Edge Animate gives me neat little graphs to demonstrate what kind of easing it will use. And one of the things that I like is to make it bounce or make it elastic, right? So an elastic easing in this animation will mean that once animated, it will just swivel there for a while. So it goes, right? It's a bit too fast now, so I will increase the duration. So now my animation will go like that. Right? Fairly simple. Zoop, bong, bong, bong. Right, let's do some easing for that animation, and I'm going to open that. Let's do easing back. That's a bit more subtle than the swing. That is the very common kind of rubber band effect, as it overshoots a bit its original position and then falls back to the original position. So that's what I have so far. That's neat. So now let's go and animate let's do this. I'm going to zoom in. This is the 10-day training. So I am going to do something different. I am going to change the clipping for this. I don't want this to sort of slide in from the sides. You can see that the position of this does not really allow for this to be sliding in from any of the sides. So what I will do is I will clip this object. To enable clipping, I will use this guy over here. This is the clipping tool. You will also find clipping to be a property of each layer. You can see that currently there is no clipping. The fact that this is grayed out should not keep you from turning that toggle button. If you turn that toggle button, it will be assigned a clipping property. And this is the default size of my image, so this is the actual size of my image. So the clipping starts from 0 pixels and ends on 99 pixels horizontally, starts from 0 pixels and ends at 33 pixels vertically. So I can change the clipping, so I create kind of a reveal animation using the clipping, like that. So let's see a fairly sophisticated clipping, and what it will do. Let me first of all tell Edge Animate that I want to animate that property. Right, I already have AutoKeyframing enabled, so that's all good. And let's make it so that it starts from 0 and 99. That's fair. Let's do 0, 0. And it was 33, so let's do 15 in here. Right, so now if I move my playhead, I can create a reveal animation like that. Right, that added that keyframe. And then if I move the playhead again, I can create a reveal animation that is like that. So let's do like this, right? That's a bit too fast. So let's increase the duration of these keyframes like this. Looks about right. So it goes zoop, zoop. Remember that easing is still turned on, and Edge Animate remembers the last kind of easing that I used. That's why you can see the clipping kind of overshoot that value that I gave it. That's not nice. So I'm going to change that easing for these two animations to be something a bit more subtle. And I do an ease out. Let's do quint. So just do whoop, zoop, zoop. Right, it's that really neat little reveal animation. Let's check the speed. I can live with that. Probably I can tune it a bit further. And now finally I will use a scale animator to animate this piece of text. So scale is of course a transform property. You can also use the scale tool or this transform tool. So I'm going to go, instead of changing the width and the height of that object that I could if I wanted to, I will instead change the scale. And I will tell Edge Animate that I want to animate that property. And I want to animate it from 0. Right? And because these two values are locked, using this little link button here, I can unlock it if I need to. But because they are both locked, it will do 0, 0 on the scale. And then I move my playhead, and then I'm going to change that to be 100%. And the animation was created for both Y and X scales. So it does that. Sound effects help. If I want to navigate my timeline, I can use these little sliders here. This slider in the bottom right-hand corner will allow me to zoom out. Right? That's all my animation currently is around 3 seconds. I can zoom in. It will always zoom in on playhead position, right? It's not necessarily a good idea. Or I can use this button here that fits the timeline, fits my current animation into a zoom level. That's really useful. You can see that I have an unlimited timeline. Effectively, I can create an animation that is forever. Probably not, because nothing is forever. So I will just do this, zoom back in, zoom out a bit. Let's increase the duration for that. The easing is nice. I like that bounce. It gives it a nice little pizzazz. Cool. And there is only one more thing left for me to do, and that is to animate these little boxes here. I don't know. Maybe the same kind of scale animation would do just fine. So I'm just going to go and grab this object, use the scale property to keyframe it. I'm going to move that. And let's change that to 0. Okay. Now, understandably, I need to change the timing a bit because I want that to be the first object to be animated. And I hope that I will scale it on both axes to 100% to make it, just to make it visible. Apparently, he does not want to obey my commands. Let's do this again. So, you there, box. I want you to animate your scale. Let's do auto keyframing. Let's use these little guys and let's just change to there and change that to be 0. Yep, that worked fine. Okay, so now I need to change the timing for this. And what I can do is I can create a rectangular marquee around the multiple animations to have them selected. And I can drag multiple animations at the same time. Right, something like that. Also note that while I'm dragging these animations along the timeline, Animate creates those little smart guides that tell me if it's aligned with the beginning or with the end of another animation. Okay, let's check this out. Looks decent. Of course, we could do better if we wanted to. If time allows, you can fiddle about with animations for quite a long time. But for now, for me, this is really everything that I wanted to show in terms of using animation. I am animating scale, position, clipping. I could animate opacity. You guys are right. Why don't I animate opacity as well? So let's go with this guy here. He's not being animated. Let's make him animate somewhere after this. Yeah. Again, I'm going to use my little pin. I'm going to use the blue chevron. Put it like that. And I'm going to change the opacity. This is pretty much the first option here at the beginning. It says always on, visible, and then opacity. I'm just going to dial that down to 0. So my animation starts with a 0 opacity, and it will go to 100 opacity. Right? Neato. Now, there is one important thing for me to add to this, and that is, of course, the interactivity, the button. I want the people to be able to click this, right? And let's just see, this here is my URL for that. So I will drag out a new object on top of this whole thing, because I like to be old school. For those of you who used Flash before, this is pretty much how we've done it in Flash as well, that we created an invisible rectangle on top of the whole thing. I'm just going to turn the opacity down to 0 for this object, and we added the click functionality onto this rectangle that is like a top object on my Elements panel. Now the Elements panel not only shows me the object order, it also shows me if there is clipping applied to an object, or if an object is hidden or locked. So the background, for example, it's a clever idea to lock it. And also here I can open the actions for an object. So if I click, it will open the actions panel. I can say on click, do link in a new window, and then it gives me the script that will go window.open and then that, right? And I want that URL to be open when I click on that button. I can also do, if I don't want to do a new window, I can go click, I go links, link in same window, and then that. Right? And you can see how this tag here changes to _self. So to those of you who know HTML to a certain level, or even to a higher level, you will probably know that _self opens the new link in the same window. _blank opens the link in a new tab. _new opens the link in a new window. So that's pretty much what I will do. I will open it in a blank window. And that's pretty much it. I can copy this functionality, right? Let's just do Command and C. And I will add the same functionality for a tap event as well, and this is the touch start or touch end. So when the user taps on the screen on this object, or when the user finishes that touch movement, lifts the finger off the screen. So I do touch start, and I just paste in window, open, brackets, that URL, and in a blank window. Now it is time to test this wonderful little banner. Again, those of you who used Flash before, you are going to be familiar with the keyboard shortcuts Control and Enter or Command and Enter. That is to test the movie. And there we go. Great. And if I click it, it opens the website that I want to link to. Now, this is all great, but there is one great problem with this as far as the functionality goes. Not on mobile devices, more on the computer, is that as I hover over, I don't see the cursor changing into that very familiar kind of pointy finger thing. So that's one thing that I need to sort of debug in this project. And let me just go and select that object. And you will find that cursor is also a property for any object, and I can change that cursor from being an automatic cursor to any one of these cursors that I want to add. So I want, of course, this pointer arrow. So whenever the cursor hovers over this object, which is covering the entire banner, so pretty much the entire banner, if someone hovers over it with a cursor, then the cursor changes into that pointer cursor. So that's done. I do test it again with Command and Enter. It opens up. Animation plays, and then I hover over, I see how my cursor changes, and I click and it opens that in a new tab. So well done there. Oops. Let's go back to Edge Animate. I still have a good healthy 20 minutes to show you a couple of things, and I'm going to use breakpoints because, of course, I want to loop this animation. Maybe not necessarily the entire animation, but maybe I want to have this bit here with the 997. Maybe I want to loop that. So one thing that I can do is using this button here. This is a trigger that I can insert. If you want to loop the entire animation, it's fairly simple to do because all you need is a trigger at the end of the timeline, right? And the trigger says playback, play from the stage, press enter, and I want that to play from the first frame. So I change sim.play1, which is the first frame. I can also start playing from frame 0, which is effectively really the beginning of the entire animation. So I do that. Now if I test my animation, I will see it runs through, does all the voodoo, and then it starts again. Right? This way you can create those really annoying kind of flashy banners where the whole thing plays through and through and through and through and through. But we can be a bit more sophisticated than that. Let me show you what I mean. What I will do is instead of looping the whole thing, let me remove that trigger from there. Instead of repeating the whole thing from the very end and starting from the beginning, I will just want to repeat this guy. Let me lock my functionality here, doing it like that. So I want to repeat that guy. This guy currently has this boing animation. So I could find the beginning of that animation and I could add a trigger point there, or I could use sim play from there, or alternatively what I can do, and for now that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to remove its animation for administrative purposes. Didn't mean the entire thing, I just meant no animation for you and no animation for you. And of course it's now in 0, 0. And where did I find that? Come on, you. X and Y scale. Yeah, Just do 100 for me. That was kind of buggy. Okay, so again, if you used Flash before, the thing that I'm going to show you is not going to be new. I can change this to be a symbol. I'm going to go Modify, and I'm converting it to symbol. Even the keyboard shortcut is the same for converting things into symbol than it used to be for Flash. So it's Command and Y to convert this into a symbol. I do Command and Y, and this is going to be, let's call it price. Right? And all it does is that you can see it also on the stage, that it changed the icon. It created this cogwheel, again very familiar for Flash users. If I double click, it will bring me into the timeline of this guy, right? And what I can do is I can create an animation. Let's do an animation for scale here as well. So I'm just going to use my blue chevron, that's that, and let me scale this like this. So my animation will do that. Not much. I actually want this to be the other way around. An easy way is to select the actual animation, and then you right-click on the animation, and you can change the whole direction, the duration, by inverting the transition. And then it will do this. Boom. Boom. Right, it's kind of like a little pulse here. Maybe I want to change it. Maybe I want to start from 80%. You can see that I can change the values for the different keyframes straight on the timeline as well. I don't always have to go to the properties panel. So now it does that. Right? And then I'm going to copy these keyframes, because that's again something that I can do. And copy those keyframes. I move and copy, and I move down on the timeline and I paste those keyframes in. So now I have this animation. Right? Zip. Pop, pop. Goes back and forth. That's nice. And what I'll do is I will loop this animation. So I will add a trigger here for playback. I want to do play from price, and I want to play the price from frame 0. Right, with that I can close this. I can go back to the stage. You can see that if you enter into a symbol, then you're going to have this little breadcrumb on the top of the screen, and I can go back to the stage. I hope that you can see that, by the way, because my fat face is sitting right on top of it. And what you see is what you get. Is this. So this price has now a playback control here that says add playback command. By default it will play once. If I make it repeat, then of course it will repeat. Right? So what I want to do is I want to make this play. So it will keep playing the animation inside that loop. And now what's really great, I can move this if I want to. I can move that chevron. I can decide when it starts playing. But also I can change the size of this. And change the size of this guy independently of the animation inside. So I can make it move about. I can make him change the size. Yeah, pretty much everything I want right in there. I can also add multiple commands. If I want him to stop somewhere, I can say stop. So then it will stop doing whatever he's doing right at that point. So what I want is to do the playback from, let's say, here. Doing, 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 doing. And also, I want to change the visibility of that little object. So it's not always on, it's not always visible. I can do that up here. So if you have multiple objects, all these objects will render, but they will render off screen if they're not on stage when the animation is happening. Right? So I can just change this always on to be on there, or turn it off. Right? If I do turn it on, then before it is turned on, it is off automatically. So you will see that it has a new keyframe now. It says display on, but before it reaches that point, it will be off. So display boom, 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 on, and then it starts boom, animating from there. So one thing that I can do is animate opacity for it, for example. So let's just go chevron, animate opacity from 0 to 100 before it's turned on. So it goes. Right, let's test this. So it goes. Whoop, 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 whoop. Stone ding, boing. Duck, duck, bong. 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 Right, because I'm telling this guy to loop constantly. Right, it creates that little pong effect right there. All right. So I'd say this is pretty much everything that I wanted to show you guys within this hour for Edge Animate. Maybe if I want to take this, one step further, because I can, if I want to sizzle it as much as I like, I can go back to Photoshop, and let's just go and grab this flake one. There is a neat little flake here, and I'm going to name that flake.png. Remember, I'm generating the assets, so it will be in the assets folder right now. There is flake1.png. I can actually drag it from my Finder into the Edge Animate project straight away. After thinking about life for a short while, it will give me my little flake. And then I'm gonna move it right in the background, just behind everything. And just grab it, drag it, there. That looks about right. Okay, and I'm going to scale this down a bit. It looks about right. Right, and I want this guy to do two things. I want this guy to spin, and I want this guy to change position from the top towards the bottom. Right, so just like I did before, before I make him do all those things, I can turn him into a symbol. So I do Command and Y to turn it into a symbol. I'm going to call it flake1. And there's my flake1. Ooh. I'm running dangerously low on battery. So I will very quickly disappear from the screen for just a few seconds, and I will plug in my computer. I'll be right back with you. And Disaster averted. Yay! We're safe. Great. Okay, so I will go and grab this little snowflake, and inside this instance I can go ahead and animate. If you remember, I'm using blue chevron to animate 2. Right? I'm going to turn this off. Right, and it goes. It still does the bounce. I don't want him to bounce. I just want him to, let's do ease out, just quad. So it just falls. Right now it rises. Remember, right-clicking the animation, invert transition, and do that. So I'm going to move here. I'm going to make it do something like that. That's nice. Don't actually want him to move on the left, so just going to do, yeah, like that. That looks about right. Maybe it could do a little longer, like this. Right, I also want him to spin, so I'm going to change the rotation for this guy, and I'm just going to go bum-ba-dum. Let's do rotation, blue chevron, rotate, maybe that much, should do fine. Let's take a look. That looks nice. Alright, it's getting slower as it closes towards the end. And now, again, I'm going to use a trigger. I'm going to make him playback, play from, flake 1, enter, frame 0. And that's that. So flake 1 is now playing back from there. And it keeps repeating this. Now the great thing about this approach is that because I'm storing the animation inside the symbol, I can have multiple instances of this same little snowflake all around. So I'm going to copy and paste the flake. I'm going to move it to the other side. Maybe I want to scale this one down a bit. Let's just scale this one down. I'm going to paste in again. I'm going to move another one. Let's move it right here. Let's make this one a bit bigger. Right, I'm going to copy, I'm going to paste. There is another one. Let's make that smaller. Alright, let's test this. Oh, and there are nice flakes there as well. Oh, neat. And they're falling all over again. That's great. Although I could work a bit about the timing, or with the timing, so they are not all falling at the same time. So what I will do, I will just go and that's flake. Oh, I'm AutoKeyframing, of course. So let's make him by default stop. And let's make him play from here. Right? Let's grab this guy. Let's make him stop at the beginning. And let's make him play from there. And I'm going to grab that guy. I'm going to make him stop. Or just make him play from here. Play from, I can do play from 0 frames, and then it plays from 0 frame. Right, that's kind of dangerous because it will go back to its first frame, so I still need to make him stop at the beginning. Alright, let's test this. Ooh, nice. Right, with this method, if I want to, I could make any number of snowflakes. The whole place could be filled with snowflakes. I actually do have another flake. But now that I see I only have 5 more minutes left, let me really quickly show you how you can get this out of Edge Animate, because what we have here is great, but it's really just living inside Edge Animate, also as a preview maybe in our Google Chromes, but we have not published it. So this is our penultimate step, if you like. The penultimate step I say because, of course, the last step would be to upload this to an FTP site or to embed this into your CMS. So what I will do is I will go to File, Publish Settings, and in the Publish Settings, I will check Web because I want to export this to the web, and I will also check this guy here. This is the Animate Deployment Package. This will generate a so-called OAM file, and the OAM file is something that I can embed into InDesign, for example, if I want to use this banner in an EPUB, or if I want to use it in a digital publishing document or a digital document, then I can, of course, embed the .oam file using InDesign onto my pages. Great stuff. The published name will be banner1 because that's how creative I am. And in the web version, I want my images, I want my media, I want my scripts in these corresponding folders. So the images will go to the images folder, any audio that I'm using or any video that I'm using will go into the media folder, and any scripts that will be generated will go into the JavaScript folder. I can have this option here, host runtime files on Adobe CDN. If I do that, then everything that is controlling my animation here, all the falling snowflakes and all that, will be put onto Adobe's website. I can if I want to. I'm going to uncheck that for now. And you can also publish the content as a static HTML if you like. Once you're done with that, you can save the publish options, the publish settings, but this will not generate any files just yet. You actually have to press this button here that says publish. So I will click the publish button, and then it will go copy all the files, put everything, save everything, and it will put it next to my Edge Animate project. It's in the folder called banner1, right? And there is the banner1 HTML, and there is my publish folder right there. Inside the publish folder, I will have my Animate package, that is the .oam file, that is a standalone file that I can import also in WordPress. WordPress does have a nice .oam ingest option. And now I can also go to the web folder, and this is where my banner1 HTML resides. And if I double click, of course that will open the same banner, and I can now take that banner, I can put it onto the website. Alright, so I'd say that was pretty much it. And I do see that there are questions. I will try to address those questions as much as I can. And most of the questions are regarding the download link for this presentation. Once this recording is done, the whole thing will be uploaded to the YouTube channel, so understandably you can get it from there. With that said, I need to remind myself that I need to stop the recording. So that was it for me for today from Edge Animate and from Academy class. Thank you very much. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. I enjoyed it thoroughly. Take care. Peace. And now I will also stop the live recording. Let me just really quickly see the questions that I have. Yeah, I was worried that I will run out of battery as well, but no worry. I kept a close eye on that one. Yeah, recording will be published onto our YouTube channel. And let's see. Macros for third-party HTML5 add-ins, Google DFP. Yes, that is all the things that you can do in Edge Animate. If you take a look, you will find that if I go into any of these elements, right, even the stage has all these elements, and there are a couple of things that can hold these third-party options. One of the most important or most useful elements that can hold this information is in the creation complete, right? Once the stuff is loaded, creation complete, you can use that.